just kind of, look at what was grunge fashion, what was indie sleaze, Tumblr, and Skins UK. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you're revenant. Please consider subscribing if you like everything and anything about secondhand fashion, chaotic styling, and yapping. For today's video, I want to go down memory lane and talk about my formative years, especially in the realm of fashion and music also and art, because it's all going to include everything. And I want to talk about grunge fashion, indie sleaze, Tumblr, and Skins UK, because since we're seeing a revival of those years aesthetics, I thought that that would be actually fun and interesting to kind of know the history behind and just also see how it influenced me, but as well as influenced a whole lot of millennials, especially. Try to look back and see also how it is influencing and why it has been influencing this kind of new generation and why it came back and is becoming, still a thing today. So we're going to talk about, grunge fashion. I hope you enjoy my little recreation of what I used to dress like when I was in my teens. Because grunge was my everything. You'll see, but grunge was my everything. We first going to start talking about the grunge era and what is grunge. So grunge is a music genre and a subculture that came about in the late 80s, early 90s in the music scene in Seattle in the United States. And as of today, I feel like that when we talk about grunge, most people think about the fashion, you know, moment and not so much about the music. When the fashion was kind of gained popularity with the music genre, when it was popularized by bands such as Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. I feel like that those bands that I just cited are kind of really known for being grunge, and for like bringing this new and polished and rough and melancholic and emotional and, depressed style of rock, and it's called grunge because the term grunge that was used apparently already in the like late 50s early 60s to describe a genre of rock music that was seen as filthy and dirty because it was not respecting the rules of classical rock as they were known back then. And it really, I feel like that today when we talk about like, grunge and especially the music, I think people can actually at least name Nirvana, but apart from that, people can't really name much other like bands, because also like in the decades that followed the popularization of grunge, a lot of accent was put on the fashion because it was this very effortless, very, you know um kind of unconventional fashion, knowing as well that back then, like the political atmosphere in the 80s, 90s, like the Conservative Party in the United States, like was in power, and it was also during the AIDS breakout, where a lot of, especially gay people, were dying of AIDS, and the American government did not really pay much attention to them. They kind of let them die. And it was, yeah, where kind of discrimination was still very rampant. Mind you, it's still today, but it was like on another level back then. And also where the military industrial complex, the American military industrial complex, kind of, got bigger and also like rose in prominence. And like in contrast to, these very kind of army like shaved heads style, grunge was the total opposite to that. It was like, loose fitting clothing. It was thrifted clothing, because also a lot of the grunge bands and the grunge fans did not have much money, so men had long hair usually, and like ripped jeans and loose jeans and band tees and flannel shirts were so big, especially the flannels that were tied around the waist. I feel like that you can't talk about grunge fashion without the flannel shirt. And I would also add the denim jackets, like the oversized denim jackets was quite also of a thing. So the fashion that I described was known for men and women, but for the women, they were also known in having an aesthetic that was more specific to grunge females, which was called kinder. I don't know if I can say this word like out loud because it's a slur. So like you have it on the screen. And if you know German and English, you know that Kinder in German means children. And the name of this aesthetic was because women were also wearing slip dresses or baby doll tops and dresses. And because of that, it was, called this very childlike aesthetic mixed with this very grungy adult thing. So it was a very weird, yeah, vibe, and it was called this kinder aesthetic, which is believed to be popularized by Courtney Love, who was Kurt Cobain's wife until his death. But it's actually a bit disputed. Some people attribute it to Courtney Love, and because Courtney was also part of a band called Paul, and there was another female grunge artist called Kat. I think her name is Bielan. Do we say Bielan? How do we pronounce it? Kat Bieland, who was part of a grunge female group called Babe in Toyland. And it is believed that Courtney and Kat have been like on and off on their friendship for many years. But then also it's something that I always kind of wonder, were they on and off, or was the media, pitting two female artists in the same music genre together? Because it's actually so common to see that happen that I wouldn't be surprised. But some people attribute it to Kat Bieland, some other people attribute it to Courtney Love, because they were known, for this very specific aesthetic. Nirvana was actually not really expecting to be this successful. Nirvana's album that got actually super successful came out like all of the band members were still living in the outskirts of Seattle, because that was where it was cheaper and they were still thrifting things. I mean, they still did not have like all the glam and fame, and they were not expecting that to happen, but it did. And it really, really shaped a whole generation. And even till today, Nirvana especially, because I feel like that the other bands such as Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Mudhoney, unless you a very, huge music lover, not a lot of people know about, those other bands, but everyone knows about Nirvana. I feel like that Kurt Cobain was very emblematic of the grunge era, not only in his styles but also his demeanor and his behavior. When you listen to him in his interviews, he's talking about the state of the world and how effed up this is, and how we need to do something. And that, I mean, he was also known to be prone to depression, and we all know what happened to him. Rest in peace, Kurt. But he became a very emblematic, you know, figurehead of the grunge movement. And I went through a phase that is called soft grunge. On all the mood boards, there was always like a Nirvana album or something with Kurt Cobain. So Nirvana is really kind of embodying the essence of what grunge was about, style wise and music wise. But I think it's important to kind of give credit when credit is due. And it is believed that before bands such as Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam popularized grunge, like there was already a band that was already doing this type of music, and the band was called Bam Bam, and the lead vocalist was a black woman called Tina Bell. Also the drummer that would later be the drummer for Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. So in the 80s, early 80s, they had this band called Bam Bam, and it is believed that, you know, Tina Bell is the queen of grunge because they were kind of the first ones to bring this very unconventional rock sound to the scene, and they were also from Seattle. This band Bam Bam is not really known. Like when I was doing my research, I kind of found about it as I was digging in the articles and, you know, kind of to learn more about, you know, the history of grunge. And there's a really nice article that I read, like, you know, all the articles that, you know, I use and I showcase on those videos are always linked in the description, so you can go and check that out. But in the articles, it was literally explaining it was two members, former members of the band, because Tina Bell died in 2012 now, and they were kind of reminiscing the Bam Bam era and how Tina Bell kind of, you know, brought something innovative and new to the scene, but she never really got her credits. Actually, the whole band got, you know, ignored, and today very few people really know about that band. Kind of the first one to bring grunge in the forefront, like grunge as we know it, and not necessarily like the grunge that they were describing in the 60s, where it was more kind of to describe like some songs and music that was believed to be like some type of rock, but that is not really. And people were actually kind of shitting on it because they were like, this is not rock, this is not metal, this is not whatever, because you need to follow the rules of classic rock in order to be a rock band or to be rock music or whatever. And that's why they were calling them a bit dirt. And then it's just that later on, like about 2 decades later, like some people decided to embrace it, you know, and be like, yeah, we kind of make this very kind of, you know, new type of rock that is not completely rock, but that is a little mix of all the things that very inspired us. And there came grunge. Now it's time to talk about sub grunge, indie sleaze, or Tumblr aesthetic, however you want to call it. I personally called it for the longest time the soft grunge aesthetic, because when I was in that aesthetic, because that was literally my teenhood, that was how we referred to this fashion style. But I know that today it's mostly referred as indie sleaze, and upon my research I found out that the indie sleaze term was coined by a fashion forecaster on TikTok called Mandy Lee. She had like a very viral TikTok where she was talking about the resurgence of indie sleaze and Tumblr aesthetic, and many fashion outlets were referencing her when they were talking about indie sleaze. But please let me know if it's not coming from her, but I am actually kind of believing that it might be from her, because before that term, we did not really use indie sleaze. I heard that term from Gen Z. And I remember the first time when I heard like indie sleaze, I was like, what is indie sleaze? And then when I was looking at the pictures that they were showing for reference, I was like, oh, you mean soft grunge? Uh-huh. Yeah, because that's how we called it. Um, and soft grunge was a mix of so many things, and that's actually why we called it soft grunge and not grunge, because it was not just, um the whole grunge aesthetic, and it was also uh, more of a subculture and a fashion movement, that it was music, even though it also spawned some music, and we're going to talk about it afterwards. But it was more like the whole aesthetic of, you know, taking some aesthetic from here and there. Like, because when we talk about indie sleaze, the what was doing indie sleaze, what was making indie sleaze was this inspiration stemming from 90s grunge style to the 80s electro rock to the pop art movement. So, like, like indie sleaze was a mix, and still is a mix of so many genre and um eras. It's not just one specific things, and that's also why we call it soft. The indie sleaze fashion was prevalent in the what we call the noughties. Like, the specific dates are still disputed today, but it is believed that it was like, early mid 2000 to like the early mid 2010s was kind of the indie sleaze era. And there's a quote from Olivia, who is the owner of the indie sleaze Instagram page, and she was interviewed by Enemy, the music magazine, and I really love the way she was describing what indie sleaze was, and I'm gonna quote it for you. It felt chaotic. Indie sleazes, Olivia says, of the era. It also felt like people from different scenes were coming together. There were a lot of different cliques hanging together and not really caring about just sticking with your scene. A lot of it was about being spontaneous and meeting new people and trying to have new experiences. It was pre 2008 recession, and we didn't know how bad the housing crisis was going to get or how certain things would unfold in politics. There was a sense of optimism. And it is so that, I don't know if it is because back in the day when I was in my indie sleaze era, I was a teenager, close to be like a young adult. So I was not really paying much attention to the political scene and political sphere. But like, contrary to the 90s grunge era, the indie sleaze was not really much about a political kind of message that we were trying to give, but it was more for the vibes. It was literally all for the vibes and kind of enjoying ourselves and kind of enjoying our like teenage years and just slowly entering adulthood. And it was like, I don't know how to explain it, but we never really paid much attention to the political sphere. It's something that, yeah, like kind of postponing political literacy to later is actually not good. Especially that your kid, even though he's not paying taxes or, you know, whatever, he's still contributing to this society. So he's actually allowed to have some knowledge about what's happening around him and in his country, because it's going to affect him in the long run. So, this whole thing of, hearing parents always saying, oh, you understand when you grow up. I felt like that, I was discussing that with a friend, and it felt more like that it was our parents didn't even themselves understood what it was about. So instead of being like, oh yeah, I don't really understand either, they were just like, oh no, you understand later, knowing that they did not understand. And which is, I am actually forced to believe as well, because when you see some adults, some Gen X people, they do lack some political literacy big time. Anyways, but yeah, we we were actually in those teenage years. We wanted to have fun, and like one thing that was actually so popular and that has been also mentioned in many of the articles and the Mandalay TikToks about what was making the indie sleaze era indie sleaze was also the like cigarettes aesthetic. It was emotional, but not as emotional depressed as grunge would be. Like the industries was kind of a more kind of the ciggies were for the vibes. You would see like pictures on Tumblr with really cheesy quotes, and usually someone with a cigarette and a youngster with a cigarette, and that was cool. It was about the watermark party pictures. And guys, this I had completely forgotten about that, but I have pictures that I'm putting here on the screens about that kind of time where you would get your picture taken at a party, and then you would have the watermark of who like took the picture, and it was everywhere. I remember it was so big. The digital cameras as well, we were all with our digital cameras taking pictures, and it was actually such a very kind of we like innocent naivete type of feel that we had back then, where we were just like, okay, we now teens or young adults, and we're just experimenting life. That was all that was about, experimenting life, kind of doing our own experiences, and just living the life of being a teen, not really caring much about the state of the world. So, like, other things that were also very like prominent with this Tumblr aesthetic, or indie sleaze aesthetic, was first of all the use of Tumblr. I was on Tumblr 24/7, maybe not 24/7, but I was on Tumblr a lot. And I also know that MySpace was still big at that time, but I feel that it was kind of losing a little bit of steam because of Tumblr. But MySpace, like we're going to see later, is going to be helping some like bands in the music scene. But I remember some of my friends had MySpace. I had an account, but I was not active on it because I was literally on Tumblr all the time. And that's also how I got into the soft grunge. One like Tumblr famous creator that I was following, because yes, back in the day on Tumblr, you were Tumblr famous. It means that your pictures were getting reblogged many times, and like probably because I'm part British and because I live in Europe, I was mostly filled with UK creators, because it was also at a time, by the way, where I was living in Switzerland. But Switzerland, because Switzerland is actually late for so many things all the time, we didn't really were big on Tumblr. I remember that when I was on Tumblr in my high school days, majority of my friends were not on Tumblr. I had another friend, because she was also British, who also had Tumblr, and she had the same interest as me. Cressy, I hope you're doing well. But other than that, like people were not big on Tumblr, and especially people were not big on soft grunge, because my style was so out there compared to the other people. Oh, that I remember like all the looks that I would get all the time, because I would wear riptides or fishnets, and before I got my docs, I was wearing some like mountain walking shoes. Instead of that, I had like shorts, jean shorts, and I always had like my uh denim jacket, and I was so out there compared to the other girls and other people that I would always get looks. And also another thing, I'm not gonna like dwell into it too much, because I want to talk about it in another picture, in another video regarding the topic. But the pro ana groups, on Tumblr, guys, there was a time where if you were on Tumblr and you were in this soft grunge um, realm, there were a lot of subgroups, and some of them were about eating disorders. And Pro Anna is short for, yeah. And they were everywhere, and it was a lot of body checking, a lot of kind of giving tips on how to lose weight. And it was dark. It was really, really dark, but it was also kind of seen as part of what grunge fashion was about. Yeah, so like I was following one like Tumblr famous person called, now on Instagram she's called Erica Camano. And I remember she was like my big time inspiration. She was like the queen of like sub grand fashion at my time. I remember like her pictures would always get reblogged so much. She would post like outfit pics that would get reblogged so much. And when people would ask her, "Oh, where did you get this? Where did you get this?" and she would be like, "Oh, charity shop. Oh, I charity shopped it." So it was actually like she was like really massive, and she's one of my biggest kind of role model back in the days in my Sogran era. I remember that I really drew so much inspiration from her. And it's always funny to then see what they have become, because we're now nearing our 30s, and we clearly like our style has like, you know, evolved over the years. So it's always so interesting to see that. The mashups, oh guys, the music mashups were so huge. I don't know if it's because we used to go clubbing, and because of that, and you know, the watermark clubbing pics, and you know, because of the fact that we were like this generation who were going clubbing like crazy and doing their own you know, experiences and stuff like that. Like we were big on mashups, but mashups were huge. And I think mashups are coming back, but back then, honey, they were massive. They were really, really big. So yeah, so it was really like a whole aesthetic. Like indie sleaze was a whole aesthetic. And when I think about indie sleaze, the first things that comes to mind to me is literally Kate Moss, Glastonbury 2005, Hunter Muddy Boots, like Pete Doherty behind her that she was dating at the time. And that is the epitome of indie sleaze. When I think about indie sleaze, I think about this picture in particular, and this picture will forever be the embodiment of indie sleaze. Kate Moss was basically the figurehead and the Madonna of the indie sleaze era and style. There were also other people. Sky Ferreira was also big, but I feel like that Sky Ferreira was mostly big for her like music, because it was very much, you know, in the era. But you know, like Alice Delal, oh my god, and Agnes Dane were literally the my three fashion inspo, because back in my indie sleaze soft grunge days, I remember just looking at them. Like it was also the time because like Alice Delal had like a half shaved head, which also inspired a lot of girls to have their half shaved head back then. I mean, it was kind of really big at the time. Even today, like when people are recreating indie sleaze outfits and stuff, like Kate Moss is always like the main inspiration. A big kiss. I feel like that Kate Moss style back then was like more indie sleaze than that. You can't. I feel like that the woman in a way invented indie sleaze, but it was not only her fashion but also her lifestyle, because she was kind of messy as well. And indie sleaze is just all about messy. That's something that it takes from grunge, the messiness of you know, indie sleaze, where she had a very famous, a very kind of, exposed relationship with Pete Doherty. I still have this picture of them where Kate is on the balcony. She's not falling, but literally half her body is out of the balcony. And you have like Pete Doherty. So there was that. There, like, in the Slays is just, she was really the embodiment of messiness, and I love it for her, and I'm glad that she, still there, because there was sometimes I was like, girl, are you okay? But yeah, but like Kate Moss is literally like really the embodiment of what indie sleaze is. And what's actually very interesting also about the whole indie sleaze, so I told you that it was also about the music, and the music was clearly inspired to the grunge era, but it was still also different. I mean, it was the time when bands like MGMT were big. I feel like that today's generation, the Gen Z, have probably heard about MGMT thanks to Saltburn and the Last Act music, like song, Time to Pretend, which got big again. But MGMT was literally my time. Tame Impala was my time, and it was a lot of also British bands, indie groups, and I feel that indie pop groups were massive. Alternative rock, that we also called back then, and I was actually such a fan that that was a time where I had my computer had like the CD DVD slots. Now there's no, you can't do that anymore, but back then you could with my I couldn't with my laptop. And what I would do is I would buy physical CDs. And here I have Arctic Monkeys. I have 4 albums of Arctic Monkeys. I was a huge Arctic Monkeys fan back then, and Arctic Monkeys is actually a band that got popular thanks to MySpace. Actually, the people who were on MySpace, the fandom that they created on MySpace were sharing it around, and that's actually how they got really, really popular. And it was during the indie time. It was before also I had like Spotify. So I have like the 4 albums of Arctic Monkeys. I have like Humbug. Then I have Favorite Worst Nightmare. Then I have Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. And then I have AM. But like there was, the Arctic Monkeys, but another really popular group were the Vaccines, and I was a huge fan of the Vaccines. Guys, I'm still a huge fan of the Vaccines, but like I feel that when I listen to the Vaccines today, like I always think about Glasgow. I always think about festivals in general. I always think about, my soft grunge eras, because I was blasting the Vaccines. And here I have Come of Age. What Did You Expect from the Vaccines? And English Graffiti. My favorite is like Wetsuits. It's actually so good. And All in White. All in White is also good. Every time I listen to Wetsuits, I always feel like I always see Tumblr, because I remember, I don't know why, because I think I was always listening to some music when I was actually browsing on Tumblr. Another big band that was at that time was The Kicks, which is also an English band. Two Door Cinema Club. I've seen them live at the 2013 Montreux Jazz Festival here in Switzerland. I even have a picture of me in front of it, and you can actually really see how I was so big on my, soft grunge era. The fedora, guys. The fedora was actually a sign. The fedora and the Doc Martens, big time. All that to say that indie sleaze, when I think indie sleaze, I mostly think Great Britain, United Kingdom. And when I think 90s grunge, I mostly think about the United States. And I also think that, that's also why there's a difference, because here in the UK, when we kind of took the grunge, the American grunge, we kind of, cooked it our way. Even the figureheads of soft grunge and indie sleaze are British as well. Like Kate Moss is British, Agnes Dane is British, Alice Dalal is British. Like, every time I think about soft grunge, I only think about Great Britain. And also the bands that I showed you here were like all British. So I really feel like that indie sleaze is a very British thing. But when I think about 90s grunge, I think about the US because, Seattle and Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. There's also something about, the resurgence of indie sleaze and the grunge that, came back after the pandemic. The indie sleaze time, especially, were a time of community, a time of physical interaction, where we were more so kind of meeting up with friends IRL because the pandemic happened and it isolated us so much. And we were not really prepared for that. I think that post-pandemic, we are still yearning for a sense of community and a sense of belonging. And that's also why so many micro trends comes and go, because like we're trying to find community somewhere, and those trends are a way to be part of a community, to belong to a community. Because when you feel like that you have people that do share interest and want to move forward the same direction, it always feels very reassuring.
I got it. Freddie and JJ got it. That termite over there got it. But you're not going to get it. Got it?
It's impossible to talk about 90s grunge and indie sleaze inspirations and implication without mentioning Skins UK, and especially Effy Stoneham, because that girl had a chokehold on so many of us. She was everywhere. She was such like model to us to follow. Everyone and their mothers, no, I would say everyone and their girlfriends wanted to be Effy Stoneham. Especially if you were like very deep in the indie sleaze grunge lore, you would like you could not escape Skins. You really could not escape Skins. And so for like a brief synopsis of what Skins is about. So Skins is a UK teen drama series that ran for 7 seasons, and it was following different groups of teenagers in their last 2 years of sixth form at Roundview College in Bristol, UK. For those of you who don't know what sixth form is, it's the last 2 years of high school before university. And so like what was very like particular with this series is that like not only like all the actors were played by actual teenagers, and this is very important. And secondly, every 2 seasons they would change the cast, and each cast was playing for 2 seasons, and each cast was referred as a generation. So you have generation 1 for the 2 first season, then generation 2 for season 3 and 4, generation 3 for 5 and 6. So each generation had 2 seasons, except for Effy. Effy actually was kind of a consistent character for 4 seasons, and then I would even say 5, because the very last season, the last season of Skins was more kind of a let's see what they have become now, and they were checking on some old cast members in their adulthood. So I would say 5 seasons, but like more consistently like season 1 to 4 Effie was there. It's just that in the first two seasons, she was more of a secondary character because she was just the little sister of Tony Stoneham. Like Tony was the bad boy, and his clique, yeah. So he like she was like Tony's little sister. So she did not had like a prominent role. She was there because she was his little sister, but but afterwards, like in season 3 and 4, that's when Effie, she is then generation 2, became really important, and she really kind of embodied the whole kind of like what Skins was about. And so it aired 15 years ago. Guys, I'm going to be 30 this year. So it means that when I was watching Skins, I was literally 15. I was literally 15. Like 14, 15. So I really watched Skins and I followed this show in my like teenage years. And that's why the fact that it was played by actual teenagers was so important, because we related to those characters so much. Like Skins was also a bit controversial. There's been some complaints here and there, and especially like for generation 2, like Effie's generation were mental. Like when I'm telling you that they were crazy, it was just so insane. And I think that's also why it's the most iconic generation, because like it was the whole like emo grunge messy generation. The love triangle between Effie, Freddie, and Kirk. Like the lesbian relationship when one is discovering like that she is a lesbian with Naomi and Emily. Like and all that. The kind of petty fights between the twins. It was just like the whole thing was so accurate to what we were living through as teens, where we were, little rebels. We were kind of getting to know ourselves a little bit more, talking about sex and getting into relationship. Like Skins was so true to life. And the fact that those teenagers were clearly, like, we're also like about our age, also add a layer to it. Everyone wanted to do like everything they were doing. Like in the UK, I remember it was insane. Everyone wanted to imitate what Effie and her clique were doing, because they were the actual cool girls and boys of, the town. And it was just seen as so realistic to what we would do, that so many kids and like teenage kids were trying to emulate what it was happening on TV. And I think because of that, the future generation were toned down a little bit. Generation 3 did not really impact me that much because they were kind of more the chillest one. I met Laya Lewis though. I met Liv from Skins Generation 3. I think it was in 2012 or 13 or something like that when I met her. So that's how big I was, knowing that, she was just walking down the street and, just doing her thing. And we were kind of matching as well because she was also wearing like a denim jacket. Effie's fashion was everything. I remember, like, I think in the very first episode of season 3, when she's arriving at Roundview College, you can literally see her, and she is the epitome of soft grunge. She's wearing the very similar fishnet tights. She has a lot of necklaces, like bead necklaces and stuff. She had bracelets, and she's actually wearing like a long t-shirt And then I remember what type of shoes she has, but I think she has some type of combat boots or something. And then her makeup, like the black eyeliner, like all. Effie was like the typical ideal soft grunge girly, and we all based our inspiration on her. And because we so wanted to be her, we also wanted to be her in our behaviors and demeanors. But yeah, her fashion was actually really, you know, representing what the indie sleaze was at the time. And I would say like the whole skins, you know, was about that, the whole indie sleaze. But like Effie, because I think because the season was actually so intense, and because really Effie was so well known about her smoking a ciggy, having a really emo, dark, grunge, depressed type of look, and she was like getting herself into such dramatic situation, and there was this love triangle. Like it was just insane. Like the whole thing was so insane, and so like so I just, guys, like if you have not seen Skins, please watch it because it's literally one of the best series at the time. And I think the reason why it also spoke to me this much is clearly because I watched it at a time where I was myself going through a lot of the topics that we're talking about because I was a teenager. And a lot of my friends have told me that literally Skins UK's little sister is Euphoria. I have not watched Euphoria. Uh, I was planning to, but then I got kind of, by, Sam Levinson. So I don't know. I'll see. But I have been told that literally Euphoria is like watching a little sister going through what you've been through, but it's just that now they have social media and like a better sense of fashion, whereas like Skins, shout out to Chris from Generation One wearing the kufia back then. I see you. But I'm gonna link down below a site where you can actually go and read about, they're kind of roasting some of the, Skins UK's cast members' fashion sense. Because it's true that some of them was, when you look at them, you're like, even though, let's be honest, like with the whole ugly cute aesthetic going about, I feel like that it's very fitting, but still, there's the ugly cute, but you still do the ugly cute in like the right way, and some outfits on Skins UK were very questionable. Like I just remember like the complaints that people were receiving back in the day of parents not really liking it because they thought that it was too much. And all my friends in the UK, we also wanted to be like Effie Stoneham, and like our Tumblr would be like filled with Effie Stoneham quotes or edits and stuff like that because she was just our queen. I do kind of, bow down to Effie because till this day, she's still the most iconic. I feel like that even though I loved all the cast, and the stories, and, I really related to what they were going through as well. Uh, Season 2 was still has my heart. And I think it's because it was so intense and so like heart wrenching, and they went through so many painful situations, and I don't know, it was so realistic as well that I'm actually, yeah, like Skins UK. And because I was like in my sub grunge era, so like the grungiest generation was Generation 2. So also that's why it has like a special place in my heart. Skins really impacted me and was so important during my formative years, especially my fashion sense, Effy Stoneham, Erica Camano from Tumblr, Kate Moss, Agnes Dane, Alice Dalal, the vaccines, uh, Arctic Monkeys, the Cooks, all those were very, very big in my fashion sense. And the fact that I can actually go down this memory lane is actually beautiful, to be honest, because I get to really see how my style has evolved and also my views on the world and the society. It's also kind of beautiful to see like how you can change in a span of 15 years. So that is it for today's video. That was slightly different from what I post, but I just wanted to do this little like walking down memory lane about a time that was very important and formative for me in my fashion sense and my understanding of culture and like the zeitgeist and my music taste and all that jazz. And since we also seeing a revival of this grunge and indie sleaze, I thought that would be like interesting to see like a bit of the background and to talk about what really inspired it, especially for Gen Z that might not really know much about it but just interested in the aesthetic of it. So yeah, I just hope you liked it, and if you did, give it a thumbs up because that helps me a lot, and share it around, and I'll see you in my next video. Love always.